Hola, soy Fernanda Hein. Yo tuvimos la oportunidad de conversar con Tom Smith, vocalista de la banda Editors.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us this interview. Means a lot.
Very nice to speak to you. Thank you.
So, as the first question, this album is going to celebrate the 20 years of career as a band, and that's quite impressive considering that most bands break up before the 10-year mark. So, what does that mean to you?
Um, I'm proud of our longevity. It's something to celebrate. I felt like when we were doing our best of a few years ago, that kind of opportunity to talk about the past and think about the past. Because honestly, normally outside of that time, we're always thinking about the next thing. Always trying to find ways to um evolve our sound, do new things. Some of our change has been forced upon us. After our third record, when Chris left the band, that wasn't part of the plan. But those next 10 years with Elliot and Justin, you know, were kind of equally as wonderful for us, And then, yeah, now with our seventh album, and Ben joining the band and, things changing again, that kind of evolution continuing, it's, I think that willingness to embrace change and not be scared of things moving into a different place is part of the reason that we're still here. I think to be creative, to maintain any kind of creativity for a long period of time with other people, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, can you? And I'm aware that some of the changes that we've made musically over the years, we've lost fans because of it. But the reason we're still here is because of those things, because of those changes. So, not be afraid to mix things up.
Yeah. And do you have anything else planned to celebrate this huge mark besides the album, I mean?
To celebrate what, sorry?
The 20-year mark of the band.
No, I mean, obviously we have a new album and it's dealing with things, looking forward and thinking about the future. And like I said, because we've just done the best of, which was nostalgic, purposely so, I think, no, now's the time for looking forward. We'll celebrate the 40th properly, maybe.
And with being a band for so long, I guess many things change, but from the band's perspective to do music to you all getting married and having kids, is the music the only reason you're still together, or do you all consider yourselves like a family now?
I guess it's half and half, the music is obviously very important. But one thing that spending 2.5 years away from each other because of the pandemic and because of lockdown, because we don't live in the same town anymore. So we didn't see each other, obviously professionally, in person for a long time. So having that taken away was just realize how much I missed, my brothers, So that relationship we have as friends and just spending so much time traveling together, sitting in dressing rooms, talking shit, talking about football, talking about politics, talking about life, is wonderful, and I missed it, and we all missed it just immeasurably when it was taken away from us. So of course the music is important and the music is there, and our relationship together is there to kind of to make this music, but our relationship with each other, and just hanging out is part of it, a huge part of it. So it's both.
And about that, you've all been in the industry for so long. Is there something that you learned in the beginning that it stuck with you? Maybe some advice you received?
I can't think of any kind of enormous bombshell, to be honest with you. I think, with age, as you get older, the way you process things obviously changes. And I think back to who we were on those first couple of records, And, you know, if I could tell that person to perhaps just chill out a little bit and not be quite so, take things quite so seriously. Because, you know, when we first came out, obviously it was very exciting and things kind of exploded, but there was so much kind of pressure. And as soon as things started to get kind of negative, you know, in terms of our reception or relevance, it was kind of hard to deal with for me. And being on stage and dealing with that was produced moments of anxiety and stress that I think if it was me now, you know, I deal with very differently. So some kind of advice about that I could maybe offer my younger self, but now, you know, and I think about the band and the reason that we're still here and we're still doing what we do and our place in the wider kind of musical landscape. I think we've always existed in the shadows and not been the coolest thing and always kind of not been the thing that's been written about the most. And perhaps, you know, that suited us, you know. I remember we did Isle of Wight festival on the end of the first record. And I met Chris Martin for the first time, and he said to me, whatever you do, Tom, don't stop writing. And at the time I was like, that's kind of shit advice. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of like, duh. Obviously. Thanks, Chris. Nice one. Have a good show. But, you know, he's right. You know, you do have to keep working. You have to keep it rolling. You have to, you know, it can get stale if you don't keep things moving, keep rolling, keep trying to be creative with things. So at the time, I thought it was the worst advice possible. But thinking back now, I think it wasn't. It was good advice.
And about the album, how different was the creative process for it, given that for the first time you had someone else to pitch in ideas?
It was the most different for lots of reasons, as a band and also personally in my relationship with the music. We have to go back before the pandemic, and we were offered a show at a festival, and they wanted us to do 2 sets. One set was going to be a best of set, traditional, and the next night they wanted us to do something bespoke, one-off. And we approached Ben Blank Mass, who we'd worked with a little bit on production with Violence. So how do you feel about doing a concert at a festival in a tent? We will play edit songs, but with your help, we'll kind of make a techno electronic set. It'll be really kind of dark, really full on. It'll be songs that people know, but in a way they've never heard them before. It'll be fun. And he was like, yeah, that sounds wicked. Let's fucking do it. So those conversations started up. And as we started talking and working towards it in the early stages, he kind of offered the idea of, well, how do you feel about, you know, maybe if you tried to do a new song like this? And it was quite a bit of a surprise to hear that. But then he sent over little demos for what ended up being Karma Climb and Heart Attack, and I think Kiss was another early one. And as soon as I heard these kind of musical ideas, there was no words on them or lyrics or vocal melodies at all. I was like, fuck, this is really incredible, you know, ideas that he's sending to us, to me, predominantly. So, started working on new songs to be heard at this show. Obviously, the show then didn't happen because of COVID, and it got taken away from us. But because we'd started working on these new songs, the record, we couldn't stop it. It just started to grow, and he started sending more ideas. And then everyone, you know, we're now in lockdown. Everyone's kind of working remotely and listening to things on computers and emails and stuff. And yeah, it just started to grow that way. So and then, you know, going to a side slightly, normally every other editor's album, all the songs I start, you know, I'll be the guy that comes to the band with the chord progression and, you know, if you play the song on acoustic guitar, and then we'll develop the music together. These musical ideas started with Ben. So for me, I was more of a decorator. I was kind of trying to make these things work as songs, put my voice into them in the world that kind of worked. So yeah, it's the most different editor's record. And at some point, it was like, okay, shit, Ben, what are we going to do here? You know, we've got this. Do you want to join the band? Would you mind this being an editor's album? And everyone's got egos, you know, Ben joining an existing band, 5 people becoming 6. And also at the same time, everyone's still in lockdown. No one knew if there was ever going to be any concerts ever again. Everyone's feeling kind of fragile and worried about the future. And it was just a crazy time. So yeah, this couldn't be any different to any other Editor's record that we've made.
Yeah. But about the creative process, what was the most challenging thing to do? Maybe a song that wasn't coming up or something like that?
The most challenging thing was just, I think just the anxiety about the creative relationship between six of us. You know, the five of us now had made the last three albums. Over the last 10 years, we'd made 3 records. And then obviously the 10 years before that, me, Ed and Russell had made another 3 records with Chris. So there's this weight of history that editors have. So when you change something so fundamentally with different people, no matter how good the demos feel and sound on email, worrying about if this is going to work in a studio together when you're actually together is a concern. And it's intimidating for everybody. Everyone's got egos. Everyone's kind of worried, you know, for Ben coming in, for everybody. Everyone's got their own issues with it. So there wasn't really any musical problem. You know, as soon as we started working, the songs, you know, I did know deep down that they were going to work, you know, as editors. So I knew that when Russell and Ed played on them, the rhythm section, I knew that it was going to, you know, going to work in a way that benefited it. You know what I mean? It just felt right. So there wasn't really any musical problems at all. But because it's such a strange time, we hadn't been together for 2 years. We were for the first time in a studio together in person, and like that was so wonderful. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how there could have been any problems because it was just so nice to be next to human beings who I loved and working on, you know, new songs that felt so exciting with this new person that was so open to being with us, and we knew we got on with him. But you know, it was kind of boringly perfect.
I'm glad to hear that. And as a band, you've always been known for exploring new sounds. So was there something specific that you wanted to achieve for this upcoming album?
I think that kind of balance between, you know, what a traditional rock band is, a guitar band, and playing with synthesizers and computers and electronic kind of things. That balance between the two things is something that we've wrestled with, and I mean, struggled is perhaps over dramatic, but you know, we've navigated that balance to different degrees over our history. And with this record, with Ben's influence, because he's such a strong musical force, and obviously his solo music he makes as Blank Mass is so confrontational and uncompromising. The issue was to harness his ideas and we didn't want to lose that, but equally, when you're in a band is the definition of compromise. You know, you have more than one person creatively trying to work together to listen to each other. Everybody has a different opinion. There's times when you agree and disagree, but to get there in the end, you have to compromise. So to work with Ben, joining our band, that was, I guess, potentially the biggest struggle. It wasn't a problem, and it worked, like I said, very well. But I think just conceptually, editors welcoming such an uncompromising musical force was where there could have been an issue. And you know, what did we want to achieve? I think we just wanted to kind of find a new balance, find something that felt exciting in a way that it hadn't before for us. You know, that's always the mission, to be honest with you. It felt like with Ben and with these songs, kind of knew it was going to surprise people a bit. I knew it was going to kind of feel. A few interviews have used the word vivid, and I like it. I think it's true. I think there's a new balance with this record that we've not found before that just feels vivid and kind of sparkling, you know.
Yeah. And there are songs that gave me the impression that Depeche Mode was a big influence on them, like Kiss, for example. Did you have someone or a band in mind as an inspiration for this album?
I think, you know, there's obviously kind of bands from the 80s have always popped up when people talk about what we do. Even when we've made kind of more, if we make guitar music, people will talk about Joy Division. As soon as we start using keyboards and stuff, people have talked about Depeche Mode and lots of artists. But the truth is that we love a lot of music from that era. And I think perhaps there is a quality to my songwriting and my vocal that is evocative of that time. Perhaps I'm just a bit old-fashioned in what I do, and I don't mind that. So yeah, of course, Depeche Mode. I mean, the reason we made In This Light and On This Evening with Flood was because of Violator. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just such a huge record for us over those few years, and really wanted to like embrace, a band without guitars. You know what I mean? So that felt like the right thing to do at the time. And I think if you were to talk to Ben about the 80s and bands from the 80s, he'd just talk a long time about, Erasure or fucking Pet Shop Boys or some of the harder kind of, some of the EBM artists that kind of have influenced him and Elliot, and some stuff that I'm perhaps not as qualified to talk about. I like the big songs of the 80s, as a songwriter, I kind of like those kind of big moments in songwriting terms, So yeah, I think it's always the way it's come out of us as individuals. Most of us are children of the 80s. I was born in 81, so Ed and Justin and Russell were all, we were growing up at that time, and I think probably fell in love with music in the 90s, but that backdrop of kind of 80s kind of music has always been there, so it's just the way we're wired, but yeah, sure, Depeche Mode are a big influence. Yeah.
And personally, I think this album it's going to be one that connects people, especially after all this time that we couldn't really connect because of COVID. Is it like that for you?
I hope so. I mean, fuck. I mean, that's like a question, a bigger question. We're all kind of coming out of this thing that we've all been to. That I guess that does kind of connect us all. The fact that we've all been through this thing over the last 2 or 3 years. It's fucking raining. It would be lovely if it was a record that could do that. Like I said at the very beginning, the idea was to make a record that would be heard for the first time at a festival. That kind of collective thing you have at a festival is quite unique. That kind of like a moment where people who don't know each other do completely find unity because of music coming from that, late night when you're kind of having a good time, alcohol and whatever. But those things can be beautiful. It can be some of the most powerful experiences you have, So the idea was these songs would work like that. So, perhaps maybe 3-4 years down the line from when that's actually happened, then, if there could be any truth in that or any kind of, that would be amazing. It would be incredible.
And what's next for the band? Do you have any plans on what you would like the band to be in 20 years from now?
In 20 years from now, I mean, it's not, we did the best of, and it was nice to be nostalgic. It was nice to think about the past, like I said to you, but now it's so much nicer to be thinking about new music. And for me personally, it feels like we've started the beginning of the third chapter of the band with Ben. And so EBM, this is EBM 1, EBM 2, EBM 3, whatever, like the idea of this thing now, this new thing we have evolving is exciting, and thinking about where it could go in a different place than we've been to before. So for me, it's always just thinking about the next record or the next set of songs. And Ben sent me a new idea for a song last week, and I'm already like, I'm just thinking about that. I mean, obviously the next thing for us is to get this album out. It's still not out until September, and to do some touring. And I hope that the world we find ourselves in next year and the year after continues to feel like it's coming out of what we've been through COVID wise. I don't know if that's going to be the case though. There's obviously worries about that, and I hope it is. So yeah, if it isn't, if we go backwards, we'll still just dive into making music together. But it's been really cool the last 2 months being back on stage at festivals in Europe. It's been nice to play new songs, to be in that environment again, because we hadn't been for a couple of years. So But in 20 years time, I mean, I'll be 60, 61. You know, having said that, we just watched Paul McCartney headline Glastonbury at 80, and
Yeah.
he brought out Bruce Springsteen, didn't he? Who was
and Dave Grohl.
And Dave Grohl, you know, and I think as long as you can find fertile ground, and I would imagine we're still loving making music together. Hopefully we're all healthy and enjoying touring together, but
like Kiss.
Yeah, we'll see.
They
like,
are
not like Kiss. No, maybe not like Kiss. No, maybe that might be too far. Yeah.
They're going to add like 100 new concerts for their last tour. So, yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And as the last question, is there any possibility that we're going to have an editors concert maybe someday here in Chile?
I hope so. And obviously the question is, well, why, editors, have you never been to South America? Do you know what I mean? And the answer there isn't a straightforward answer, but it is probably the biggest regret of all of our band. You asked them the things that we wish we'd done that we hadn't, and that would be to tour South America. And we've never managed to get it together. I think if we'd managed to get it together on that first or second record, then it would have probably happened naturally over the years a bit more, but we never did. And now we're like, in our 40s with kids, it becomes complicated. But that doesn't mean it will never happen. And I dearly hope it will. But it would be our biggest regret. And I wish there was a straightforward answer, but there isn't. It's just sometimes things just don't work out.
Yeah.
We nearly have a couple of times, but anyway, that's boring. But
yeah. Well, thanks again, and hope to see you soon around here.
Thank you. Nice to speak to you. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.